Do you want to know what happens when you make the main character remark something every time he picks up absolutely any item or collectible?
Chocolate. Marmalade. Curry. Yuck! Grass flavour.
This.
Ugh! Liver. Curry.
This happens.
Chocolate. Oh! Sprouts.
Anyway, as you might know, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone movie had 5 different game adaptations. However, one of them, developed by Warthog Games for PlayStation 2, Xbox and Gamecube, was not released in 2001 alongside other Philosopher's Stone games, but in 2003, between the Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban movies. Due to the specificity, to save time in this video, I will ask you to first watch my review of the console Chamber of Secrets, as Philosopher's Stone is based directly on that game to the point of reutilizing most of the same Hogwarts map. The link is in the description and YouTube cards. This time, all 3 versions of the game are absolutely the same with no differences in terms of content. What I do have to mention is that the PlayStation 2 version is the worst in terms of performance, sometimes failing to reach a consistent 30 FPS. The footage in this video is from the Gamecube version, which most of the time runs at a stable 60 FPS. I find this version of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone to be somewhat underappreciated. It does have plenty of flaws, bugs, and a general lack of polish. It's clearly a title that was developed in a very short period of time, based on existing unused assets from when Chamber of Secrets was a Philosopher's Stone game, so Electronic Arts would have one more Harry Potter title that fiscal year. But also, looking at the game's reception, I find it unfair. People and critics say that it's a cheap clone of Chamber of Secrets, mostly due to reusing the same core gameplay mechanics as well as the Hogwarts map. And while these aspects are certainly true, there are merits that are sadly ignored, but we'll discuss them in this video. And so, without further ado, we'll dissect both the positives and negatives of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone for PS2, Xbox and Gamecube, as always with the help of my Stasocritic scoring system. And we start with design. This category has the biggest weight, 4, as the way a game is played and designed is what influences our experience the most. The core gameplay is sort of a mix between the PS2 and GameCube Xbox versions of Chamber of Secrets. The movement feels more like in the PS2 Chamber of Secrets version, but with an added full 360-degree camera rotation like in the GameCube one. Enemies don't make you lose a bunch of your beans like in the PS2 version, but spell targeting without lock-on works more consistently like in the GameCube Chamber of Secrets. Though here we get to the first caveat of Philosopher's Stone, this consistency applies pretty much only to Flipendo. Spells like Defendo or Incendio are practically impossible to use without lock-on. There are many other little core gameplay flaws that by themselves don't pose much of a problem, but they pile up. For example, you can't pick up imps until the animation on them falling down plays in full. This is problematic because as part of that animation they try to get back up but fail to do so, and you can't pick them up until this whole sequence plays out. Gnomes, for example, don't have this problem. Bowtruckle's defeat animation is very delayed. Even when they don't pose a threat anymore, they're still targeted and it takes a while before they disappear. There is not even an animation between those two states, they stand frozen. In this game you shall encounter more than one troll, which are defeated by making them hit a spongified spot. The thing is, it doesn't work for every hit that affects the spongified area, but only when they play a specific animation. It starts after a troll detects that there is an active spongify in front of them, and that detection works very inconsistently. On the other hand, Lumos works fantastically against ghosts. The targeting is precise, the spell shows clearly what its range is, the longevity depends on how charged it is, when you're successfully targeting a ghost the Lumos spell turns red. It's great and actually a big improvement over how Lumos worked in Chamber of Secrets. But the developers most likely didn't have enough time to bring all other enemies and spells to that kind of polish. Though nothing is as broken in this game as much as stealth. If not for the invisibility cloak, it would have been impossible to complete any of the segments. There is just absolutely zero consistency and the prefects have ears like a hawk. What's worse is that they don't reset their position on failing, so you can make life more difficult for yourself while trying to run away. Luckily, there is a very little amount of stealth sections this time around. But also, this makes the Weasley shop practically useless, as most of the things you can buy there are supposed to help with stealth. And when it comes to the Hogwarts open world, if in the Chamber of Secrets video I have said that the grounds feel sort of dead due to lack of activities and people around, well, here it's even deader. There is no racing with other students, no gnome tossing, just a couple secrets on fully explorable grounds and several notice board quests, which are even trickier to complete than before because this time the objects you need to find don't sparkle. Quidditch Cup is absent, you will play it only once as part of the story, though again there's clearly been a lack of development time as the dialogue implies there were more Quidditch matches before. And I'm not sure, but I don't think there is a way to lose the House Cup, so once again the house points feel meaningless. Prefects don't deduct points anymore, and while Snape does say that he will deduct points from students who should arrive without homework, it is impossible to do so, Ron or Hermione won't let you. So you might be asking yourself, with such a pretty big amount of problems or lacking aspects, why do I find the reception of this Philosopher's Stone game to be unfair? Well, it's because not everything is worse than in the Chamber of Secrets. That is a very important aspect that is much, much better, and that's level design. Pretty much every level design issue I have mentioned in my Chamber of Secrets video has been acted upon. The spell distribution is much more uniform, there is no spell that suddenly stops being used at some point, every level you will utilize your full arsenal. Which is smaller than in Chamber of Secrets, it's 6 spells as opposed to 8, but this time you don't have to forget about any. More than that, even earlier spell challenge dungeons have optional locations which you would need to access with incantation that you will learn in the future, promoting replayability. I lamented how the levels in Chamber of Secrets lacked any sort of exploration. This is not the case in Philosopher's Stone. Every level is packed with secrets to find, which include challenge shields and wizard cards. These 2 points mean that levels in Philosopher's Stone are so much more elaborate than in Chamber of Secrets. For the purposes of comparison, here are the maps of the first spell dungeon in each game. And while a level from Philosopher's Stone might look somewhat more intimidating in its map form, it is actually a pretty good and straightforward first spell challenge. The golden path is very clear, it's just now there's something else besides it to make use of your curiosity. And levels in Philosopher's Stone are also better from a thematic standpoint. For example, the challenge for the spell Spongify, which makes you jump very high, is appropriately designed around a central column that you have to keep climbing through different means, with a lot of explorable rooms, optional and mandatory, you can visit on your way up. The Diffindo challenge from the Herbology class takes place in big open areas, while the Incendio challenge is the opposite. There are a lot of enclosed spaces focused on avoiding fire. This makes every level feel distinct. Exploration aspects within the Hogwarts castle have also been improved. Now, even though the principles are the same, most of the area is open for you from the get-go, and everything you have to find is chests with wizard cards, most of these chests are actually hidden, and you need to perform certain actions to make them appear. Maybe there are imps that you need to catch and put into their cages, or a flipendo button that you need to push which is hidden behind a Diffindo carpet. It's not something that drastically changes the way you explore Hogwarts, of course, but it does make the process more engaging than just visiting classroom by classroom and using spells on chests. I also can't help but admire the technical prowess of the developers that have managed through object streaming to seamlessly connect the whole Hogwarts together. I didn't mind the loading screens in Chamber of Secrets, but here there are only a few locations where you will get one. The rest feels like it's one big connected place, and that's fantastic. All that said, I do have to mention that despite all these improvements, the lack of development time still rears its head. Some levels are outright lacking, like for example the Forbidden Forest one. It's just a small corridorish level where you have to reach point B and then go back to the entrance again. The library restricted section level is pretty much a cut down, less interesting reuse of the same level from Chamber of Secrets. And the ending section of the game is not great, with a very poorly done final boss. Speaking of bosses, there is a big lack of variety, even more so than in Chamber. Mostly trolls and venomous tentacula. You will see those as often as gargoyles in the Chamber of Secrets, so their appearance gets pretty tiring. Even the Devil's Snare is just a large tentacula, really. There are some places that seem to not have had a condition trigger connected to them due to lack of time. For example, in the dungeons, there is a chest in the middle of 4 imp cages. But there is no imps. Clearly, the intent was to put imps in this place and make the chest appear after you cage them. But the project was rushed, so it just stays there among forever empty cages. And I suppose that's a good metaphor for what Philosopher's Stone is. This is not a game that lacked passion or talent. And there are plenty of interesting things to be found. I personally really appreciate Hagrid's Garden, a gradually unlocking area in which you have to find ingredients for Snape's potion lesson homework, and you can tackle that at any time you want before the due date. This is very cool. But then this same Hagrid's Garden will have doxies who keep pestering you because they bugged out and Flipendo doesn't work on them anymore. So if you open up all the scores for design, and feel free to pause the screen to read them all, I will assign a 5. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good to be found in this Philosopher's Stone game, which elevates it beyond Chamber of Secrets in certain aspects. But the developers clearly didn't have the time to properly finish the game, so while the levels and exploration are still good and fun, there's just too many flaws, inconsistencies, and sometimes outright broken things. Let's move on to context. This category has the weight of 1 as it's about things that enhance the experience rather than define it. Plot, motivation, character arcs, etc. Now, Philosopher's Stone is obviously based on a movie, which in turn was based on a book, but when it comes to adaptations, we take a look at the context category only as it pertains to the games themselves, without assumed knowledge of the source material. This version of Philosopher's Stone had the advantage of being based on a movie that was already released and not in the middle of production, so it actually straight up reuses a lot of lines from the film rather than trying to figure out itself how to condense a lot of book plot points and dialogues into a game format. But also, like Chamber of Secrets before it, Philosopher's Stone tries to make cuts or changes to better fit the flow of the game. For example, the Norbert subplot is entirely cut, and that's to the better. In the PC and PS1 versions, it would lead to weird side quests that are irrelevant to the narrative at hand. And to accommodate for its absence, Harry has to venture into the Forbidden Forest together with Hagrid not because of detention, but because of a potion ingredient they need to find for Snape's potion class. That's a very nice combination of the needs of the plot and the needs of the gameplay. Also, the game tries to utilize book elements where it would fit better. For example, the main trio gets into the Forbidden Corridor. There's a lot of forbidden stuff in Hogwarts now that you think about it, because of a trap set up by Draco when Harry accepts the challenge to duel him, and not just an accident like it was in the movie. All that said, lack of development time is noticeable here as well, because there is just so many elements missing. Harry plays Quidditch without ever officially joining the Quidditch team. At one point he just does. In one scene, Harry tells Ron about the vault he and Hagrid have been to after reading a newspaper in Hagrid's hut, and that's a cool detail, but the scene with the vault was never shown or mentioned. During Halloween, Hermione is crying in the bathroom, and there was literally zero reason for her to do so. There was no animosity between her and Ron and no reconciliation. It actually sometimes makes the plot difficult to follow because there are arcs or notions that are resolved without any setup, and things that have been set up but lack any sort of resolution. Though overall there are still enough scenes to not be confused about what's going on generally speaking, and using the dialogue straight from the movie definitely positively influences the enjoyment we get from experiencing the scenes that are there. And this last part, should you open up all the scores for context, is what tips the score I will assign from 5 to 6. Ron reasonably questioning what are the teachers thinking when they keep a huge three-headed dog in school, our characters receiving points for sheer dumb luck, and Hagrid lamenting how he should not have said that. Those aspects were certainly enjoyable in the movie, and they are enjoyable here as well, although not as elegantly connected together. Time to discuss aesthetics. The This is another category with a weight of 1, as it's about other aspects that enhance the experience but don't define it: visual style, music, voice acting, etc. And we won't spend much time here today, because everything I can say about the aesthetics of this game can be summarized as such. Take everything I have said about the PlayStation 2 version of Chamber of Secrets specifically, and make it less polished. Far less polished. On static, the game looks good. The visual style is very clearly defined, character models are nice, and so on. But in addition to the issues that the PS2 Chamber of Secrets had, in Philosopher's Stone a lot of animations aren't thought out. Like for example, Ron just regularly pokes his eyes out with his wand. Then characters rarely ever pause between lines in their conversation.
Hey Harry!
Hello.
I'm Ron Weasley. I'm in Gryffindor too. It's no surprise really. All my brothers are in Gryffindor. So, why do you think Professor Dumbledore put the third for House of Bounds?
I really don't know.
Come on, we've got to follow that prefect.
It's odd because he usually gives us a reason why we're not allowed to go somewhere. I do think he might have told us prefects at least.
That prefect's Percy, my other brother.
How many brothers have you got?
Too many.
My name's Hermione Granger, by the way. And you are?
Ron Weasley.
Pleasure. You've got something on your nose. You must be Harry Potter. I know all about you, of course.
Look out! Filch's coming. We'd better go.
Slow down, give a moment to process what you have just said. But what really makes it look like an unfinished game is the fact that most students around Hogwarts just stand motionlessly. It actually makes everything look actively disturbing, especially when the students in question are stuck on staircases. And of course, Harry commenting absolutely every pickup in time gets extremely annoying.
Yeah, revolting! Peppermint.
All this is why, should you open up all the scores for aesthetics, I will assign a 7. You can't take away the strong foundation that this game has, but it all lacks quite a lot of polish. Moving on to Cohesion. This category has a weight of 2, and it's about how well everything is connected into a singular, wholesome experience. Again, we won't spend much time here specifically because I don't really have anything to say that I already haven't. The general day-night structure that was taken from Chamber of Secrets and homework that you get in Potions class that was introduced in this game still creates the general feeling of a Harry Potter experience. It's cool that this game also tried to show the passage of time with quite honestly some beautiful snowy Christmas scenery, except when that happens you can't go out of the castle, so you see Hogwarts in snow only in this one particular cutscene, which is disappointing. I do appreciate that this time there is an implication that Harry is not the only one completing spell challenges by sending Neville first in one of the lessons. But should you open up all the scores, I will assign a 7. The lack, or rather only but a partial inclusion of House Cup and Quidditch aspects, the disjointed way the narrative is connected together, and of course the technical issues take away from that Harry Potter experience. And now our final category, emotions. This is the most subjective part of Stasocritic, but it's got the second biggest weight, 3. We talk here only about personal feelings, but at the end of the day they matter a lot. Well, what can I say? I liked playing Philosopher's Stone mostly due to its very well done levels, except for the ending ones, there the game was clearly rushed even more than usual. Will I ever want to replay it though? Well, no. This may sound contradictory to what I have said before about me feeling that the game is underrated, but that's still true, it is. Do I get the people who do not enjoy it? Yes. I just find that the discussion around this version of Philosopher's Stone rarely includes the things it does well, and as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to gaming discourse, that's not right. That said, the aspects of the game that I do appreciate are not enough for me to outweigh all the technical issues and unfinished aspect that Philosopher's Stone sadly has. Which is why, and this is another category which we have discussed pretty quickly today, I will assign an 8. I enjoyed my time with this version of Philosopher's Stone, but it's not going to leave any sort of lasting impression on me. Let's summarize everything. After all scores and weights are taken into account, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone for PS2, Gamecube and Xbox gets a final Stasocritic rating of 61, which, might feel like practically the same score that Metacritic has, but Stasocritic is not Metacritic. In the context of my system, it doesn't mean that the game is bad, it's actually a nice one. But of course, you should be very well aware of its issues before trying it out. I wouldn't recommend this game to everyone. If you like the PS2 or GameCube Xbox version of Chamber of Secrets, chances are high you'll find enjoyment here, should you be willing to accept a number of technical flaws while playing. Otherwise, you'd probably want to pass this game, especially if you're easily annoyed by a barrage of interrupted character barks, because, well,
Tripe. Toast.